Welcome to this recording of Man's Greatest Adventure. This inspiring discourse was originally delivered by Paramahansa Yogananda at the Self-Realization Fellowship International Headquarters in Los Angeles, California, on February 29, 1940. We are honored to share his divine insights and timeless wisdom with you today. Life is the greatest adventure imaginable. Although some lives are without much interest and excitement, others are full of extraordinary experiences. I heard of a man who tried 32 times to commit suicide, and something happened every time to prevent him. Imagine what it would be like to know all about the lives of all the people who are now on earth, and those who are gone, and those who are yet to come. Such is God's power. Jesus said, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing? And one of them shall not fall on the ground without the knowledge of your Father." The lifetimes of experiences of all men are in God's memory. It is difficult indeed to conceive of a consciousness that is aware of everything that has ever happened. Yet to fathom the nature of spirit is the greatest adventure in this universe. I will give you a picture of it as it is coming to me at this moment before my spiritual eye. Truths are more than imagination. They are real. Yet their origin is a thought in the mind of God. All of the different forms of atomic matter, for example, are but materialized thoughts of God. They can be reconverted into thoughts, and the thoughts can again be materialized into objects. Man also has the power to conceive ideas, but his imagination is not very strong. If his imagination became powerful enough, man could create material objects on earth. He has latent within him the same creative power by which God, even as he thought, materialized his mental creations in the world. But it has become next to impossible for man to materialize his thoughts because he has not utilized the free power, the divine power of thought, bestowed on him by God. Understanding God's consciousness. When we try to imagine the consciousness of God, we wonder how he can remember all things, because we judge everything by the standard of our own mental capacity. We understand according to our own experience. A person whose memory is not strong tends to assume that everyone else's memory is the same way. Yet there are persons of exceptional memory who can recall a whole book, perhaps, just as easily as you can remember a few lines. Those who are forgetful find it difficult to realize that others can have an unfailing power of recollection. A jeweler remembers his jewels, a bookkeeper the figures in his books. So God is able to remember everything that he has created in this universe. Being gifted with almighty power, he has instant recall of everything that has ever happened. God does not need a limited physical brain to remember what has passed. His limitless consciousness is all-knowing. The origin and power of memory. Memory is a wondrous power. All human memory comes from God's tremendous memory. For example, you cannot tell me about all the motion pictures you have seen since birth, but if I were to show you one of those films again, you would instantly recall it. The divine underlying memory is right there within you, ever recognizing experiences that have passed. As soon as you see the opening scene again, the whole story comes back to you. "Oh, I saw this picture before," you say. "I remember how it ended." How is it that we can recognize a picture, every detail of it, that we have seen years ago? Because all happenings are recorded in the brain. As soon as you put the needle of attention on a certain record of experience, your memory begins to play back that experience. If I ask where you were sitting when we were here together last Thursday, you recall it and begin to remember other things as well. If I ask, "What did I say?" my words start coming back to you. The inner power of memory comes from God and is perfect. It never forgets. The ordinary man's memory cannot hold the consciousness of all experiences at one time, but the underlying divine memory retains everything simultaneously and permanently. Therefore, good or poor memory is a matter of conviction. You have convinced yourself that you have a weak memory, and so you have a weak memory. However, it is not easy to jump from this belief to the opposite. Much effort is required to convince yourself that your memory is in actuality a manifestation of the all-recalling divine memory of God. The greatest human memory is naught but a borrowing from the unlimited consciousness of God, in which are recorded all the adventures of all human beings and other life forms. The story of God's creation is marvelous, how He projected into existence all beings on this earth, and how He is working behind the scenes to bring us back to our real existence in Him. It is almost impossible to describe in human language the cosmic adventure of God's creation and its subtle intertwining with the individual life adventures of countless human beings. We find that human beings live on the average 60 years, the crocodile from 60 to 100, the redwood tree lives for 2,000 years, the dog only about 14, and the horse at most about 36 years. It is evident that someone has fixed these various lifespans. Yet we hear of some great yogis who have lived for hundreds of years. I know definitely that Mahavatar Babaji has lived for centuries and is still in his body in perfect youth. Trailanga Swami is said to have lived for more than 300 years. Truth is more fascinating than fiction. The possibility of longevity. It is possible to imagine that under favorable conditions, and if there is no waste of vital essence and there is proper food and right thinking, the human body could go on indefinitely. But the pressures on the body are terrific. When a mouse is caught in a trap, its heart beats many times faster than it does normally, and when you are unable to pay your bills, your heart does the same. Thus, worry takes its toll. And there are other kinds of stress. I am told that the police commissioner of Chicago has demonstrated with instruments the possibility that if noise were taken away from the cities, their residents would live 10 years longer. We are living in a wonderful world nevertheless. Those who exist only to eat, drink, and be merry, and to sleep, have no idea of the wonders of human life. The soul's adventure begins. The adventure begins with the struggle the soul goes through to enter a womb at the time of conception. In the astral world, there are millions of souls struggling to return to Earth, to enter the mated sperm and ovum cells at the time of conception. Saint or sinner, unless you have attained final redemption, there is a great desire to reincarnate again on Earth. At the time of conception, there is a flash in the ether and one soul enters as the sperm and ovum cells unite. You had to fight to get into the womb. Not only you, but many souls rushed to enter, and the ones that won are you and I. It was not an easy victory. Prenatal consciousness. After you have entered the womb, you ask, "What have I done? I have been free from the confining mortal body for so long, gliding along in a weightless body of light, and now I am caught again in a physical form." Nevertheless, you become accustomed to these new conditions during the 9 months in the womb. That is the punishment. It is 9 months of living in a dungeon in which you have to breathe through someone else, eat through someone else, receive your blood and the power for its circulation through someone else. You are dependent. Your soul cries to the Lord, "Let me out of this prison. I can't see, I can't hear, I am bound." If there is a Hades or purgatory, it is those 9 months in the mother's body, helpless, in darkness, bound to one spot like a tree, with only occasional memories of the past coming in, and then lapses into sleep. It is when memories of the past life come that you struggle in the mother's body. I have transported my consciousness into these prenatal states, and I know what I am saying. The baby's sleep and wakefulness in the mother's body do not depend on her sleeping and waking. The child's will to move is a memory coming from the soul's past. So he stirs restlessly in the mother's body until he tires and goes to sleep. Then he wakes up for a while and moves again. He feels hunger, and through the nourishment in the mother's blood, the satisfaction of his hunger. The infant arrives in this world crying, because the saints say the soul remembers its previous incarnations and does not like the thought of coming back to earth again to go through the struggle of life here. Related also to this memory is the attitude of supplication in which a baby usually holds its hands before it comes into the world. It is praying to God, "Please don't give me physical birth again." The physiological explanation of the baby's crying is that the lungs must be opened up in order to start the breathing process, and the baby's first cry is an effort to activate the lungs and start the breath of life. When the baby is born, the breath goes in, and the soul that was semi-dormant becomes a living being with an independent life. God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Many persons mistakenly believe that the soul enters the body at birth, but if the soul were not already there, the body would not have developed from the original tiny cells. Should the soul leave the embryo before birth, the infant will be born dead. Man's composition. Man's body is made of 16 basic material elements, supported and activated by 19 elements of subtle energy. These can be condensed into pure consciousness. Man became a living soul refers to the fact that the ordinary man's physical body, which is made of chemicals, the dust of the ground, must breathe oxygen in order to be sustained on earth, as ordained by God when he first breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. When the baby is born, he blinks at the light, he hears sounds, he smells and tastes, and he breathes. He sees that conditions seem to be normal. He has a physical body again. His prenatal resistance to birth ends with his first breath, when Maya, the cosmic delusion that existence depends on body and breath, comes over him. He feels once more attracted to the physical world. The struggle for control. As time goes on, the baby struggles for control over his body. How often you see him repeatedly thrusting his hands and feet up in the air in an attempt at coordination. All these actions are directed by the subconscious mind through the soul's memory of the past. That memory is always there. You instinctively fear death because you remember the many times you have been through that experience. You are also afraid of pain because you have suffered many times before. When the baby grows into a little child, he is surrounded by the influences of the mother's and father's guiding will, and the wills of other relatives as well. Each one wants him to be something different, and his naughty friends want him to be still something else. The child has a great many struggles with these conflicting pressures. This is a miserable life, so it is good to give your children a little freedom. Young ones who are given too much freedom, however, may later lament, "I wish I had been told long ago not to do this. Then I would not be what I am today." Think of all the struggles, physiological and mental, one has to go through until he becomes a youth. At that time of life, the senses become more active, and the youth has a great inner battle with himself. The struggle with the senses is a tremendous contest. To conquer in this adventure of youth, to go victoriously through this thrill of living, is a great experience. It is wonderful to be alive, but there are many agents waiting to kill us. An adventure with wild animals in South Africa is nothing compared to the adventure of life itself. No other tale in history is as interesting. Man with his intelligence knows how to protect himself against animals, but he doesn't know how to protect himself against his own bad habits and evil ways. The greatest of all enemies of man is himself. More than personal or national enemies, more than germs, bombs, or any other threat, man should fear himself when he is wrong. To remain in ignorance of your divine nature and to be overpowered by bad habits is to make an enemy of your own self. The best way to be successful in this adventure of life is to be your own friend. Krishna said, "The self is the friend of the transformed self, but the enemy of the unregenerate self." It is easy to picture ourselves starting off to explore some wild and unknown country. If we are going by ship, we want a lifeboat with us. Should the steamer sink, we know we can get into the boat and save ourselves. But in so many of life's experiences, there seems to be a leak in our lifeboat, no matter what precautions we have taken. In a jungle infested with animals, you can take reasonable care against them, but subtle dangers are more difficult to overcome. How to protect oneself against a barrage of germs. Millions are floating around us all the time. We think we are safe when we take precautions against dangers we can see and hear, but we have only inadequate means to protect ourselves against germs. In your own bloodstream, the white corpuscles are constantly fighting these organisms. Drugs only numb them. The white corpuscles are the soldiers who move in and destroy them. If your blood is weak, the soldiers will not be able to help you. In the lungs of many unsuspecting persons lurk fierce tuberculosis bacilli, ready to destroy their host. Nature forms a restraining wall of cells around them, but it is effective only so long as the body can keep up its resistance. This struggle of life goes on constantly in the unseen jungle of life within. If you could examine your food under a microscope, you would not eat it. Germs are having a feast thereon, and you are swallowing them whole. The water you drink is alive with such organisms. There is no true vegetarian because everyone eats millions of germs each day. Shall man then stop eating? Prepare for every kind of battle. In order to go safely through this jungle of life, you must equip yourself with the proper weapons. You have to be a well-trained soldier. The layman who doesn't know how to protect himself is soon killed. The wise man who is armed against all forms of warfare, against disease, against destiny and karma, against all evil thoughts and habits, becomes the victor in this adventure. It requires carefulness and, in addition, the adoption of certain methods by which we can overcome our enemies. As we progress, we learn better methods of vanquishing the causes of our physical, mental, moral, and spiritual disasters. When you have gone successfully through physical illnesses and accidents and inner struggles, then you can say that life was a sweet adventure. Jesus could say this. But before you have similarly conquered, it is premature to say that life is sweet. Until you have attained final ascension, liberation of the soul in God, life is not yet finished for you. You have not overcome the desire to be adventurous until you have ascended consciously in spirit. The importance of mind power. Seeing someone who is suffering, you feel thankful that you are not going through that particular adventure, but you may be next. The possibilities of harm to the body are numerous, so be equipped. The scientist says, eat nourishing food and follow health laws to protect yourself from germs. The politician says, be good soldiers to protect yourselves from outside enemies. We are living in strange times. Even women, the proverbial saviors of the world, are being trained as soldiers to kill others' children. Horrible. But once in a while some good comes from war. It removes cowardice from us. In this jungle of life, surrounded by enemies, disease, poverty, suffering, bad habits, and wrong desires, there are so many rules to be observed that life becomes intolerable when you try to keep them all in mind. You tire of them because each department of life is limitless in its potential for diversity. When you attempt to apply health rules, you are nearly overwhelmed. There is no time to think about anything else, and everyone has a different set of health precepts for you to follow. We are under a great hypnosis. As I tried different methods, this truth dawned on me. Mind controls the effectiveness of them all. The ultimate protection is God communion. God has given us one tremendous instrument of protection, more powerful than machine guns, electricity, poison gas, or any medicine, the mind. It is the mind that must be strengthened. As for the body, I will do only the will of God. If He tells me to go to a doctor, it is all right, and if He tells me to suffer, it is all right. Whatever is His will is my will. An important part of the adventure of life is to get hold of the mind, and to keep that controlled mind constantly attuned to the Lord. This is the secret of a happy, successful existence. Even though you adopt physical methods of healing, do not put all your faith in the methods, but in the power of God behind them. If you have cut your finger, put iodine on it, but inwardly pray, Lord, help me not to be dependent on medicine, but to rely on mind power alone. Attaining mental mastery. You have not been taught how to attain that mental state. It comes by exercising mind power and by attuning the mind to God through meditation. In this way, you should gain complete power over the mind before you try to deny matter and material remedies. Until then, it is best to take common-sense steps to help the body. When you can drink poison and remain unaffected by it, you can rightfully deny matter and say mind is everything. You must arrive at that consciousness first. God offers you an invincible weapon by which you can eradicate all your sorrows and suffering, wisdom, which comes through God communion. The easiest way to overcome disease, disappointments, and disasters is to be in constant attunement with God. We are babes in the woods of life, forced to learn by our own experiences and troubles, stumbling into pitfalls of sickness and wrong habits. Again and again, we have to raise our voices for help. But the supreme help comes from tuning in with Spirit. Whenever you are in trouble, pray, Lord, you are within me and all around me. I am in the castle of thy presence. I have been struggling through life, surrounded by many kinds of deadly enemies. I now see that they are not really agents for my destruction. You have put me on earth to test my power. I am going through these tests only to prove myself. I am game to fight the evils that surround me. I will vanquish them by the almightiness of your presence. And when I shall have passed through the adventure of this life, I will say, Lord, it was hard to be brave and fight, but the greater my terror, the greater was the strength within me, given by you, by which I conquered and realized that I am made in your image. You are the king of this universe, and I am your child, a prince of the universe. What have I to fear? Faith and fearlessness. As soon as you realize you have been born a human being, you have everything to fear. There seems to be no escape. No matter what precautions you take, there is always a misstep somewhere. Your only security is in God. Whether you are in the African jungle or at war or racked by disease and poverty, just say to the Lord and believe, I am in the armored car of your presence, moving across the battlefield of life. I am protected. There is no other way to be safe. Use common sense and trust fully in God. I am not suggesting something eccentric. I am urging you to affirm and believe, no matter what happens, in this truth. Lord, it is you alone who can help me. So many have fallen into ruts of disease and wrong habits and have not pulled themselves out. Never say you cannot escape. Your misfortune is only for a time. The failure of one life is not the measure of whether or not you are a success. The attitude of the conquering man is unafraid. I am a child of God. I have nothing to fear. So fear nothing. Life and death are only different processes of your consciousness. Everything is meant to bring out the soul immortality. Everything the Lord has created is to try us, to bring out the buried soul immortality within us. That is the adventure of life, the one purpose of life. And everyone's adventure is different, unique. You should be prepared to deal with all problems of health, mind, and soul by common sense methods and faith in God, knowing that in life or death, your soul remains unconquered. You can never die. No weapon can pierce the soul. No fire can burn it. No water can moisten it, nor can any wind wither it. The soul is immutable, all-permeating, ever calm and immovable. You are eternally the image of Spirit. Is it not freeing to the mind to know that death cannot kill us? When disease comes and the body stops working, the soul thinks, I am dead. But the Lord shakes the soul and says, what is the matter with you? You are not dead. Are you not still thinking? A soldier is walking along and a bomb shatters his body. His soul cries, oh, I am killed, Lord. And God says, of course not. Are you not talking to me? Nothing can destroy you, my child. You are dreaming. Then the soul realizes, this is not so terrible. It was only my temporary earth-life consciousness of being a physical body that made losing it seem the end of me. I had forgotten that I am the eternal soul. The goal of our life adventure. True yogis are able to control the mind under all circumstances. When that perfection is reached, you are free. Then you know life is a divine adventure. Jesus and other great souls have proved this. Nothing could touch them. They enjoyed uninterruptedly the sweet romance with God. It is the only part of the adventure that has any purpose. Human love is meaningless unless anchored in the unconditional love of God. A boy and a girl fall in love, and after a time, they fall out of love. Romance with human beings is imperfect. The romance with God is perfect and everlasting. You will finish this life adventure only when you conquer its dangers by your willpower and mind power, as did the great ones. Then you will look back and say, "Lord, it was a pretty bad experience. I came near failing, but now I am in the safety of your presence forever." We can see life as a wonderful adventure when the Lord finally says, "All those terrifying experiences are over. I am with you evermore. Nothing can harm you." Man is playing at life like a child, but his mind grows stronger through fighting sickness and troubles. Anything that weakens your mind is your greatest enemy, and whatever strengthens your mind is your haven. Laugh at any trouble that comes. The Lord has shown me that this life is but a dream. When you wake up, you will remember it only as a dream of joy and sorrow that has passed. You will know you are everlasting in the Lord.